The Minecraft community is in shambles. Wilbur Soot has been accused by an ex-girlfriend, while George Not Found has been accused of SA by a small streamer named Katie. This is fresh off of the heels of false allegations against Dream, which he was able to accurately debunk on his own channel. So, what the hell is going on? Wilbur Soot originally came from the Soot House channel, where he and his friends would react to funny Reddit posts at a time when that content was dominating YouTube. From there, he became exponentially more famous than all of his former collaborators through general gaming and lifestyle content. Wilbur had built his brand on being a soft boy, a male-identifying individual that displays more tender traits, from how they act to how they dress, that are stereotypically associated with the feminine. As his channel grew, he explored other creative avenues like music. Songs like Your New Boyfriend and I'm in Love with an E-Girl became actual hits with tens of millions of views. This in turn birthed Lovejoy, a British indie band he was a founding member of. All of these projects put together built him a channel of 6 million subscribers, one that was inherently tied to Minecraft content and the Dream SMP. It's through Minecraft he had met Shelby Shovel, a 30-year-old content creator who's actually been on the platform since the early 2010s. In February of 2024, she would go live on her Twitch channel to make accusations about a large creator who she claimed had abused her. But it wasn't just any kind of abuse.
He's not hitting me. And it didn't start as something that he did to hurt me. He had this habit of biting, which is so weird to me now, but he said that he had this habit since he was a kid, and even his mom said that that was true. And he said it was just affectionate, and that might have been, I think that might have been true maybe at the start, but I also feel that I have good reason to believe that every part of it was a lie.
According to Shelby, Wilbur had begun their relationship with love bombing, the act of an abuser to enter a relationship with someone to get their guard down and then begin their terrible behavior. According to her, he began biting right from the beginning, which was framed as a friendly thing, but over time he would continue to bite her and it would become more and more intense. She expressed discomfort, so they agreed on a safe word, one she claims he would frequently disregard.
He disguised it as this really quirky part of our relationship and was so comfortable sharing it with his friends, to the point that he would do it in front of them. He thought it was this really funny story to tell and a good bit to take my arm and bite me in front of everybody until I literally shout in pain. And then I have to laugh it off because I'm so embarrassed.
She says despite her continually expressing that it was extremely painful for her, he continued throughout the relationship without expressing remorse. This escalated to the point where she was covered with bruises all over her arms, which he would poke fun at and show off to his friends.
He would even joke that it looked like he abused me.
She said for every day they spent together in person, he would continue harming her, and they even had conversations in which she would ask him to stop, and he simply said, "This is who I am," and he wouldn't. At this point, Shelby didn't provide any evidence for these allegations, just her story. Despite this, various stan accounts quickly figured out she was talking about Wilbur Soot based on their past relationship, and they began criticizing him on Twitter. He responded on February 27th, 2024. In the past week, a series of allegations have been made over my conduct from an ex-girlfriend. I want to emphasize that, although I feel it fair to offer my perspective, this person's feelings are completely valid. During our relationship's final months, I regrettably became slobbish, disrespectful, and selfish. These actions caused a lot of pain to my ex-girlfriend, and I've since sought therapy to address these behaviors. I have come to realize how much my past behavior hurt this person, but I truly, compassionately believe I have made great strides from the person I once was, and hope I can continue to grow and improve on this trajectory. However, he denied the most serious allegation, saying the allegation of abuse, particularly in the form of biting, deeply shocked me. Throughout our relationship, I understood from our numerous conversations and text message exchanges on the subject that this behavior was consensual, playful, and reciprocally enjoyed. I truly believe those personal message exchanges reflect mutual affection and understanding. Out of respect for her, I choose not to publish them, and I emphasize my perspective is not shared to diminish or invalidate anyone's feelings. His failure to provide these screenshots was his death sentence. Creator after creator called him out, officially cutting ties. A majority of this is full of ways you've claimed you have grown and changed since this happened, but you've basically made what should be an apology of the pain you caused someone about yourself, while barely saying anything else about it, and that speaks volumes. There were so many people coming out against him that someone made a thread of content creators who spoke against Wilbur and stood up for Shelby. Meanwhile, his stans, who believed he was a good person, began melting down. His extremely parasocial audience couldn't handle the idea that he was a piece of shit. And if what Shovel said wasn't enough, the next allegation sent him into the shadow realm. Another ex of his, Alice, claimed they had dated for a brief time. She reconsidered getting back together with him, and after meeting up, he allegedly got her drunk, took her to his house, and then undressed her as she blacked out. She didn't remember anything past that point. More creators continued to pile on to affirm the allegations and criticize his response. response. Dream himself condemned him, claiming he took accountability for being slobbish, disrespectful, and selfish, while overshadowing the physically abusive actions, and claiming to be completely reformed now. You seem to truly think you did nothing abusive, and this statement is built on that foundation. You're being dishonest with yourself, or dishonest with us, or both. Other Minecrafters like Amesy, streamers like Brook of 100 Thieves, and even Lil Tay criticized him. Wilbur has yet to respond, and even if he did, it's probably a losing battle considering how poor his first one was, and how many creators have cut ties. For now, it's unclear if he's totally guilty or not of the worst of the allegations, but public opinion certainly isn't in his favor, and maybe never will be. What happened with Wilbur and Shelby definitely opened the door for the next allegation, one that would be much more contested. Hey you, do you need to turn your swag up? Yeah! Well, that's very convenient because this video is brought to you by
No.
Click and get
Fuck
going
you.
just like that. Tom, that personal. Oh! Some sour blue chug rug for all you battle. Don't be a sore starter.
No.
Fuel for store saying she. In today's video. On March 9th, 2024, a small streamer named Katie Bugs would come out with her own story. However, much like Shovel, she did not name the accused. She opens her Twitch stream about the subject by saying she had been inspired to tell her story by Shovel coming out against Wilbur. She was at VidCon, and her friends and her were at a house party. She says her best friend was romantically involved with the best friend of her soon-to-be assaulter. She wanted to go to this massive creator's hotel room, but did not want to go alone, so Katie and her friends all attended. She gets to the room where she meets these two large creators and has her two friends with her. Not much happened, they just played drinking games. But this soon-to-be assaulter apparently was flirting with her the entire night, which she found unnerving because he was the oldest there at 26 years of age and she was 18. She assumed he didn't know her age. That night, she left after the games, but was messaged by this creator, all the while her age was in her bio. A few days later, Katie was again at a party with her friends, which got boring, so they decided to go to his hotel room again. She was relatively drunk upon arrival, and apparently one of her friends spotted her in the hotel lobby, expressing concern.
I remember a friend seeing me in the lobby. On the way, they were worried by the way I was acting and asked if I was okay. I was really drunk and it was an eerie feeling, like they could sense something was wrong, and I wondered what would have happened if I had picked up on it. And if I wasn't drunk, and if I didn't wave it off.
Back at the hotel room, the three girls were pretty drunk because they had just come from the aforementioned boring party. They were then apparently encouraged to drink even more by these creators, insisting on playing drinking games. While playing these games on the couch, this older creator who had previously been hitting on her and messaged her on Instagram made a point to sit right next to her. Around 3 a.m. while playing a drinking game, she answered a question about her age and confirmed that she was still a virgin.
Right before the incident, I had answered a question about my age. We were playing a drinking game and talking about sex, and I admitted to everyone in the room that I was 18 and that I was a virgin at the time. I remember back now to him answering questions during the game about back when he was 19 and when he was in college, noticing how my future was his past, and I wondered how he felt sitting so close to me.
Katie claims to be very uncomfortable with the situation, playing games on her phone to escape the awkwardness, when out of nowhere, she felt him slip his hand under her shirt in front of everyone.
Under my clothes, sitting next to me on the couch, in front of everyone. He disguised it with a simple, "Are you ticklish?" I coughed out a no, still staring at my phone. I was overly aware of the fact that we were in front of other people, the fact that everyone else was sitting around us, watching us, including my best friend, and that his hand was inching further to places I hadn't asked for it to be. He made a game out of my embarrassment where he would touch me in certain areas to make me lose the phone game I was playing. I was scared and I felt sick, either from the alcohol or from his touch. It didn't matter because my mind was a blur.
Katie froze up, unable to speak or move at all given what was happening. Eventually, everyone else left except for Katie, her assaulter, and this other massive creator. At some point, she goes to leave, and this older guy decides to leave with her. He pretended the elevator was broken so he couldn't leave, but after she expressed no interest in leaving with him, he left with a wounded puppy look. After this, he continued flirting with her on Instagram, asking simple questions about if she would be at another convention. But this eventually dwindled down and they just didn't talk anymore. Katie considered herself lucky, and the price she had to pay for hanging out with creators was to be assaulted. Throughout her account, she breaks down, saying it was the first time she had ever had intimate contact with someone.
That night, it was the first time anyone had ever touched me. I assured myself that I was just being sensitive about it all, that it wasn't a big deal, but assuring only can go so far. I felt dirty in a way that I couldn't wash off.
She claimed to be haunted by this incident for months, trying to cope herself into believing it wasn't that serious or she was lucky to have such a thing happen to her. While it eventually dawned on her that she had been assaulted, she didn't feel she could talk about it until she saw Shelby Shovel come out to tons of support. Maybe her story could finally be heard. Based on who was in Anaheim and the publicly known ages at the time, people quickly deduced the man she was talking about was George Not Found, Dream's best friend and a founding member of the Dream SMP. George has 10 million subscribers on his main channel alone and is easily one of the biggest content creators in the Minecraft space. He responded with a tweet saying he would never break anyone's sexual boundaries or assault anyone. Katie's friends like MaxGG told him he should rot in hell for ruining his friend's life. When George said he would be responding with evidence, Max implied there was nothing he could say to refute the claim. He also addressed this on stream.
My friend cried in my fucking arms about this, and you're on stream denying it all.
Meanwhile, Katie posted a statement on Twitter preparing for his response. Pull whatever you can find. I've also screen recorded everything. I plan on using it to support my case if needed, but please share it on my behalf if you'd like, because we both know what happened. That's why I can sleep at night without scrambling for screenshots to try and twist. Emotions were very intense for those involved. On March 11th, George posted his first response, a pre-recorded video he broadcasted to his Twitch channel. And this is where things start to get messy. Unlike Katie's statement, George provides a few screenshots to corroborate his perspective. He begins by explaining that Dream's hotel room was not a typical hotel room. It was more of a suite with an area for the bed, a dining table, and a living room area with a couch. As a result, this room was used to host small after parties with friends. George claims the first night they met, he had been in a group chat with Katie, her best friend, Ghosty, and 3 other friends. These people had gone to an official VidCon party and wanted to hang out with him. Dream at the time didn't want to go to the party because he didn't want to wear his mask, but they wanted to come to his room and play a drinking game they played the night prior. Katie and 2 of her other friends showed up to the room, which was his first time meeting Katie. George first claims he was unaware of Katie's age as she was drinking before she got to the room, leading him to assume she was 21 years of age at minimum and not 18. Given they had previously attended a VidCon after party, which he assumed was 21 plus, he didn't even consider her age as a problem. At one point, he even claims Katie had a 21 plus wristband on one of her hands prior to showing up, which would corroborate his story that she had essentially been posing as older than she truly was. As for her claim that he must have known her age because it was in her Instagram bio, he claims he just didn't see it. And also, we'll get more into this later, but she was 18 years old, so who cares? That night, they all apparently got along, playing drinking games and having a good time. Everybody goes home. Fast forward to night 2. It was the last day of VidCon, so everyone went their separate ways to do panels and meet other creators. That night, George met up with a friend he had known online who happened to be in the area and showed up around 5 p.m. They hung out at his hotel room, at which point Dream messaged him asking to hang out, so they headed to his hotel room again. Katie, her best friend, Ghosty, and 3 other friends make their way to the Hyatt, managing to get inside despite not all having hotel badges, and they go up to Dream's room. They once again hang out and play drinking games. While Katie had claimed only one person wanted to go to Dream's room and took her friends to not go alone, George claims they were all seemingly very enthused at going.
You can see in these screenshots from the text at the time that they were all trying to come to the hotel, and it wasn't just oh, we're willing to follow her, essentially. They were all in the group chat and part of the discussion to go to the hotel.
Additionally, as opposed to George insisting on playing drinking games, he provides screenshots showing all of the girls who came to the room were excited to play these games beforehand and even asked what app they were using to play the games. At some point in the night, everyone is pretty drunk. They move over to the couch area and George claims he sits next to Katie. She was laughing, smiling, and having a good time, as was everyone else. 2 of Katie's friends then left, leaving Dream, George, her best friend Ghosty, and 1 other friend, and then George's friend who had met up with him. While Katie claimed she had been playing games on her phone to escape the situation of being essentially creeped on, George claimed she was playing a game on her phone while also passing it around to everyone in the room and playing with him. They also continued to play and talk about this game for months afterwards.
We actually continued to send each other high score updates even weeks after the event. To add further context to this moment, we were all actually sitting on the couch that was in the hotel room playing this game on her phone. And during this, me and Katie were at the far end of the couch and we were cuddling together. We had been cuddling for, I'd say, around an hour at this point, playing the game, talking, and just having fun. And for clarity, I had my hand around her waist above her clothes.
What George just said changes the entire allegation. According to him, he and Katie were sitting at the end of the couch, cuddling. He also says they'd been cuddling for around an hour, playing this game, and he had his hand around her waist above her ass. As for Katie's claim that during the interaction she had stated herself to be 18 years old and a virgin during a drinking game, George claims he doesn't remember this happening. As for her claim that Dream and George plied her and her friends with alcohol, George claims she was drunk before she got there, and it was a mutually agreed upon decision to continue.
They said they would join us in drinking and insisted on drinking games. They had already been drinking before they arrived, they were drunk, and the way this is phrased, it makes us out to look like we're kind of preying on them and like forcing them to drink when they didn't want to, when that's not the case. And as I mentioned earlier, they were even the ones asking to play the drinking games via the texts.
After an hour of cuddling, he says he placed his hand on her waist under her shirt. He also says it was around half an hour before he started moving his hand further up.
As I mentioned before, we had previously been cuddling on this couch for around an hour, but I did place my hand on her waist under her shirt. The way it's phrased makes it sound like it just happened out of nowhere, when in reality we had been cuddling for over an hour at this point, and it was not out of nowhere. It was also around half an hour until I started moving my hand further up, and the way it's phrased just makes it seem like it happened pretty instantly and pretty quickly. There was nothing quick about it. It was very slow, and I was very cautious about it and making sure that she was comfortable throughout the process. Me and Katie were very touchy, very cuddly, and very slowly got more intimate.
As for making a game out of her embarrassment by assaulting her further, George claims that while they were cuddling, he would touch her to make her mess up at the game. One of the biggest points against George was that he took her silence as consent. But obviously, verbal consent is not the only form, and physical reciprocation is also a pretty valid one. It's extremely rare for any sexual interaction to be as robotic as many in the community claimed it should be.
Excuse me, milady, would you like to partake in intercourse? Why, yes, I would. I consent to intercourse with you. Confirmed, milady. May I now touch your thigh? Yes, you may touch my thigh. I do consent.
This is typically just not how sex works. George also claims that while cuddling, Katie got up several times to get a drink or talk to a friend, but she then returned back to the same position every time, cuddling George on the couch. Eventually, her best friend Ghosty left, while Katie decided to stay behind at Dream's room with George. While Katie framed her leaving as being creepily followed by George, George claims something different. According to him, Dream was tired and wanted to sleep, so he asked everyone to leave. They left the room, and he went to the elevator. Her room was on the same floor as Dream, so he joked that it was broken a few times, basically encouraging her to come with him. She found it funny, but declined and went to her own room on Dream's floor, and George went back to his room as well. From there, their interactions were pretty cordial and full of banter, but this all happened online. They never met again in person. They also never sexted or had any other intimate interactions.
After this, we texted for a bit, sometimes daily, sometimes we would take a few days break, even a few weeks at some point. And at some point after VidCon, we were actually both in London at the same time, and she let me know this through her DMs. Now, I will say she didn't come out outright and say, I'm in London, but she did say that she'd gone to a place that was known to be a London thing. And I commented on that and said, and asked what she was doing in London. And just to clarify, we did not meet up whilst in London, nor make plans to do so. She was always extremely friendly to me. I was friendly to her.
George constructed a pretty well done rebuttal. The screenshots he provided went pretty far to dispel some of the smaller peripheral claims Katie made, like that George knew her age or had insisted on her drinking. And his claim that they were actually cuddling for an hour before the interaction changed everything. Why would Katie leave that out? Did she somehow forget? Given her level of detail and the seriousness of the allegation, it seems unlikely. Did she not mention it because she knew it made her story weaker? Her initial claim was that he slipped his hand up her shirt out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere, I felt him slip his hand under my clothes, sitting next to me on the couch in front of everyone.
But according to George, there was actually consent given for him to touch her. They were flirting leading up to this. She had bantered with him over text about how she better see him there. They flirted and cuddled for an hour. He tickled her while cuddling and she expressed no discomfort whatsoever. And when his hand eventually moved to under her shirt, presumably to touch her stomach or waist, she expressed the same level of comfort and reciprocated interest. This was still very much a he said, she said, but his response meant that she had to have a very, very good rebuttal. On March 11th, Katie posted a 10-image long response on her Twitter. She addresses several of the points that George made, although her responses are pretty lackluster. He admitted to touching me, that I was drunk, that I verbally didn't consent. In my mind, the conversation is over. He said silence does not equal consent, yet never got verbal confirmation from me, chose to move to a sexual act on the couch where everyone was hanging out without asking. I don't know how those two facts coexist. How can I consent when there was no question? How can I consent when drunk? Obviously, asking for verbal consent is preferred, and sometimes that does happen, but as anyone who has had sex can attest, count me out obviously, consent in sexual interactions are typically not as cut and dry as asking every step of the way. Instead, a number of social indicators can communicate if someone is comfortable or uncomfortable with the interaction. So the idea that because Katie never verbally consented, she was necessarily assaulted is ridiculous. And from what George described, they had a pretty typical interaction that two people who are attracted to each other may have. They were flirting, they moved to sitting next to each other, eventually they cuddled, and after an hour of cuddling, he touched her under her shirt. Speaking of that cuddling, why was that left out of Katie's first allegation?
Yes, the door made to play.
Come on, man. Fuck you.
As a lot of the touch was initiated by him, probably not realizing it. I mean, he was literally spooning me from my left as I faced Ghosty to my right. A lot of the cuddling he may have felt was personal, but was just me being drunk. Everyone on the couch was doing the same thing, all drunk, close together, but I got it. I was drunk. I didn't think cuddling automatically meant it was to turn sexual. I didn't know it was an invitation. I wasn't gonna push him off in front of everyone. He took it a step further in front of everyone, all because he assumed things and assumed he had the right. As a shy person, I could not speak up in front of him and everyone else, let alone say yes. Even if you wanted to take a step forward sexually, why do it in the open? If you're cautious about consent, why not ask? That's usually the first step. And more importantly, why does everything have to get taken a step further? And may I reiterate that I was drunk? She repeatedly uses the explanation that she was drunk throughout the entire thing. But of course, we have to acknowledge that George was also drunk. If she expects to be absolved of all responsibility for being drunk, then how can we also expect George to be entirely responsible if he was? To be clear, I'm not saying sexual assault is okay if the perpetrator is intoxicated. What I'm saying is that Katie was not assaulted and she's not a victim. Even if you take the most uncharitable view of events from everything we know now, there's no way what George did was assault. As for the idea that cuddling isn't sexual, as an adult, I personally have never cuddled with someone I didn't intend on having sex with, or they didn't intend on doing that with me. And yes, that includes Wendigo. But she has an explanation for getting up multiple times before returning to the same position. Yes, I got up and sat in the same spot, getting up to drink more, etc. Mentally, I believe in a room on a sofa with people on it, you just sit back where you were when you get up. Mentally, I was also drunk, and even if I were to move, that would be an obvious hit to his ego and everyone in the room. A bold move I didn't need to make. I could just deal with it till the night was over, and I didn't want someone I had watched for a while or with a large following to hate me for denying to even sit near him. I didn't want to embarrass him or myself. I know it's a dumb thought process, I acknowledge it. She admits it was a dumb move, but doesn't seem to understand why it's being used to question her allegation. As for the messages he showed outside of Insta, all proof was him showing a group chat he wasn't even in, showing messages from my friends, which isn't me. The only message showing a response from me was when we asked about the drinking game we played. That was after we played it the first night, the night where nothing happened. I liked the game and wanted to play it with the other friends of the convention, so I asked for the name. Don't know how that's relevant to anything. It's obviously relevant because Katie claimed that George had insisted on playing these games.
At the time, all of us girls were already really drunk from the party we were coming from, stumbling and everything. There was more alcohol in the room, and we were encouraged to drink some more as they offered the bottles to us. They said they would join us in drinking and insisted on drinking games. And
the implication Katie makes here is that she was being given alcohol to make it easier to assault her. This is conveniently forgotten in her follow-up. It's also never questioned by anyone involved why George is being held responsible for this alcohol consumption because he was overage and Katie's friends were not. She was spending time with people who were over the age of 21 before she got to this room. How did she get alcohol? Why were these people never criticized for giving their underage friend drinks while George was? In regards to the Instagram messages between George and Katie where she was flirty and playful, she says, I was still considering myself lucky for what happened to me, even if I was uncomfortable and didn't ask for it. I was hating myself around now, thinking I was ungrateful, but as you can see, nothing insane or proof-worthy being said, just banter. And she does include a number of screenshots of their friendly interactions. You may have noticed a large focus on age here, and I think it's important to take a moment. Katie was 18 years old and 5 months at the time of these interactions, while George was 26, meaning in the United States, they're both legal adults, and Katie herself is considered an adult in every country in the world. But her age is repeatedly brought up, almost to imply she was being groomed, or her age was being taken advantage of.
I was freshly 18 and had just graduated high school a few weeks prior.
Any reasonable person would agree that an 18-year-old cannot be groomed. You can make your own choices. You may disagree with George at 26 years old flirting with and cuddling with an 18-year-old, and personally, if I was 26, I probably wouldn't want to interact with someone that age because 18-year-olds sometimes are stupid. However, her being 18 does not change the story or absolve her of any responsibility for her own actions. Again, I felt lucky to be talking to a verified account. A verified account, okay. Someone famous, someone I had followed and watched for a while. I was uncomfortable with what happened, but trying to swallow it and suck it up so I didn't have to acknowledge or accept it. Although our texting ended a month after, I can see why people find me at fault, but the thought process of someone who went through what I have is a very unique experience, which is why I understand why it seems stupid. Only so many people have been in it to understand. You may remember there are conflicting stories about the elevator. Katie responds to his phrasing that she walked him to the elevator, saying that, I didn't walk him there. We both headed in that direction. I said, well, bye, and that's when he did the whole elevator was broken bit. She doesn't even include the fact of why they left, which was that Dream supposedly wanted everyone to leave so he could sleep. It seems kind of ridiculous that after cuddling someone for an hour, you would just say bye to them like that, but this one I'll leave up in the air for the most part because it doesn't really matter. Now, in regards to this friend that George had in the room with him, this person Katie did not mention, she brings him up here. She says he wasn't there for long, he left early, which is why I didn't mention him. I didn't even know his name. But here is a message from this guy. I've never spoken to him. This is simply a message he sent to someone who was in the room that night too. And it really adds to the situation. He left before anything happened. I'm currently watching George, 26, cuddle with Katie, 18. This message would seemingly imply there was something creepy going on and that George's friend agreed. If so, it makes George seem a bit less credible because apparently even his own friend felt uncomfortable with the situation. We had just met. Why did he think he knew me so well that he could assume how I felt, assume he knew what my mannerisms meant? You didn't know me. Apparently you didn't even know my age, but you knew what I wanted? No, he assumed it's what I wanted because why wouldn't I want that from someone like him? Katie is framing this like people who just meet for the first time never have sex. Casual sex is pretty common. There are apps like Tinder that are basically used to hook up with random people you've never met. No one in their right mind would assume flirting with and cuddling with a person is not a romantic gesture or an expression that you're not attracted to that person. How does she not see this? Whoever convinced her of otherwise, I don't know, but it comes across as downright delusional. And her framing around George's intentions is also pretty insane. He assumed it's why I wanted it because why wouldn't I want it from someone like him? To assume someone's intentions like this, typically, it's good to establish a pattern of behavior, and in this case for George, we have none. There's no history of entitlement from him around intercourse or pressuring people against their will that we've seen. She's poisoning the well to emotionally charged readers who are on her side who may have actually had an experience with assault. And if George really felt that entitled, why didn't he go further? Why didn't he ask her for sex? Why did he leave her at the end of the night instead of trying desperately to sleep with her? Why didn't he message her demanding something or acting entitled to it? I think the answer is obvious. And remind me, since when was smiling an invitation? When was sitting next to someone an invitation? Since when was being drunk an invitation? And George never said that any of these things were an invitation, so I'm not even sure who she's talking to here. Now, one thing she did have on deck are some messages of people after the fact expressing worry that Katie may have been uncomfortable with their interaction. Hi, I want to make sure you're okay. I didn't like the way George was so touchy. And redacted person told me about the shirt thing and I just want to make sure you're alright. Yes, I'm okay. It was definitely a bit weird, but I was drunk so I didn't feel like doing anything to stop it anyway, and it's over now. Hey buddy, I wanted to double check with you that George didn't make you uncomfortable at all last night. I saw he was getting really touchy with you, so I just wanted to double check. Maybe? Bro, I have no clue. Like in the moment I was chilling, but thinking back on it, I'm sweating a little bit. Like damn. And especially after verifying he knew I was 18, and I also don't know if I was chilling in the moment because I was drunk. I don't know, I have to ponder it, or just forget about it because it's over with. So in both of these messages, she expresses that she was drunk, and looking back, she may not have done it the same, but in the moment, she didn't mind. Clearly, this could have been chalked up to an awkward, regrettable sexual interaction on both parts. And once again, mentioning the age, being 18 years old makes you an adult. In regards to the wristband situation, Katie had an okay rebuttal. She shows messages from a group chat which seemed to indicate she personally did not have a 21+ wristband on. It's clear that she sent the message in chat. Obviously, it had her hand, no room for confusion on it being my hand, and once again, he was not even in the group chat to see it. Only Clay. Clay is Dream, by the way. And even if he just assumed we were all 21 because one of us was, all these assumptions could have been cleared up pretty quick with a question. I think if someone is drunk hanging out with another 21-year-old and you're under the impression that they just came from a 21+ party, it's safe to assume that person is also 21 years old. Maybe George should have asked just to be sure, but once again, in real life outside of Discord, people are not constantly asking prospective sex partners how old they are. If they're at a bar, they probably just assume they're an adult doing adult things. And once again, this entire thing seems pretty ridiculous because either way, Katie was an adult. The girl who left early also sent me this message today. It's her conversation with Clay, Dream, that night before she left the room, as she recalls it to a friend a few days later. I typed a message on my phone and showed it to Clay being like, does George realize there's 8 years between him and Katie? And he looks at me deadpan and is like, I don't see why it matters. I'm like, oh, okay. I think this response is actually pretty valid from Dream if it is real because, well, if she's 18 years old, then why would it matter? She ends her statement with a long diatribe about how she is a martyr and doing the right thing. This will be the only proof or response I have is I don't have energy and I've said all I have to say. Any further responses from now on, I will not be responding to because I'm physically away and also mentally taking a break. My comments on platforms are flooded with hate, so I cannot say I'll be active anywhere else, but I see the support. I appreciate you all. I just hoped some people would realize how so many unknown things go on behind the scenes and how dangerous blind idolization is. But I suppose it's an issue that will take much more time, and most importantly, this isn't a one-time thing. The larger creators that have reached out about their own stories concerning them and are still too scared of them to come forward, they make me sick. Women who have been friends with them, people I watch, people I've never spoken to, and people I have. This is so much bigger than me. Now, given how many inconsistencies Katie has, her framing of everything, and the lack of almost anything compelling in this response response, many expected there to be a pretty succinct final response from George Not Found to dispel the rest of this and move on with his life. Instead, he made this tweet. Since reading Katie's new post, my perspective on that night has massively changed as she introduced new information I was not aware of at all before. I have much more I will say, but for now, Katie, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I really hope you can hear my words and try to understand that I did not have any bad intentions. That does not change the fact that you were hurt. It seems something in Katie's statement changed how George felt. The best assumption here would be that the message from his own friend likely led him to change his view. If one of his best friends online of years also expressed concern at what happened that night, could his perspective actually be wrong? This was followed by a Twitter space where Dream attempted to explain his side. He opens up saying he's sorry if he did anything to contribute to Katie's pain.
The very first thing I want to be is say that I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Katie. I'm sorry for in any way whatsoever that I contributed to your pain. I just would like to make it clear that until 3 days ago, whenever this first happened, I had no idea whatsoever that anything sexual took place in any way whatsoever. I had no idea of Katie's discomfort or anything at all until her original statement. I want to try and give some perspective for myself and on everything. I just want to make it clear that I'm not speaking for George. I'm not speaking about George either.
He brings up an allegation made prior where he was accused of bringing an 18-year-old to his room to get her drunk, that 18-year-old being Katie. This accusation was made by Average Harry, a small creator who is peripheral to the Dream SMP and creators like Tommy Innit. So Dream messaged everyone that was there to figure out what was going on.
And of course, when it first was tweeted, I was like, what is happening? What is this about? But then I thought about it and I realized, oh wait, this is probably about Katie. And I was like, wow, it's nothing like that. That implication's terrible. I didn't really invite her. She was like a +1 for one of my friends. I was like, I don't think they would think that it's nefarious at all. When that happened, I reached out to like everyone. I was, again, at that point, I had no impression whatsoever of any sexual thing happening, anything, any problem, anyone having anything, nothing. I had no idea. I thought that he was implying that I did something wrong with Katie. And so I messaged Katie, I messaged Ghosty, I messaged everyone else that was there and was like, what is happening? What is this, what is this about?
From these messages, which we actually have between Dream and Ghosty, Katie's best friend, no one indicated anything bad happened that night in regards to Katie drinking in his hotel room, and there was also no mention of any misconduct from George. You would think that when Dream is being accused of this, Katie's best friend would have clarified in DMs that actually Dream did nothing wrong, but George did, and that's why this was said. For whatever reason, it didn't cross her mind.
When talking to somebody that was there, this was the first time ever that somebody mentioned ages. And they said, oh, well, I'm not sure what any of this is about, but maybe Harry's saying that because, George is 26 or whatever and Katie's 18. And I was like, whoa. I replied, I was like, but nothing happened, right? Like there was nothing that happened. And of course they replied, we're like, yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know what they probably just, and of course, still at that point, there was no mention of like sexual assault. There was no mention of any uncomfortability, anything at all to me or that I knew of remotely at all.
Ironically, in Average Harry's pursuit to get one over on Dream, he outed the story of someone he believed was a victim without their consent, which is why Ghosty thought Katie would be mad at him. Dream also extends an olive branch saying in the future, if anyone's had a bad experience with him or his friends, to just shoot him a message and he'll hear them out to try and clear things up. He never claimed that George assaulted Katie, but he does eventually break down a bit, expressing dismay that someone who hung out with him and his friend when they were partying and having a good time came away with a negative experience.
I left that night thinking that everything was a great experience and everything was, I had so much fun with new friends and old friends. And it's terrible thinking about looking back and knowing that someone else left it with not that same experience. And I wish that I had known that. I wish that I knew that then, in that moment.
After this happened, it was radio silence for a moment on both ends. Dream said that George would be responding, which made a lot of people very curious about what he had to say. Would he apologize? Was there something the public had missed? On March 16th of 2024, George posted a new final response. And in this video, we get some very interesting new insight and new receipts. He opens by saying his tweet after Katie's response was not an admission of guilt.
First of all, I just want to make it clear that my tweet that I put out after my first statement wasn't somehow admitting to guilt or completely backtracking on what I originally said. My perspective had changed due to new information that Katie had provided. So now I'm just going to go over Katie's new statement and talk about what she had to say. So first, she acknowledges the texts that I showed about them talking about wanting to play the drinking games are real, but that they were from her friends.
The reason why George brought up the messages of her friends saying that they wanted to play the drinking game was because Katie implied that the game had been forced onto her, when in reality, the opposite was true.
I only brought up that point because the implication was that it was kind of creepy of us and we were forcing the game on them.
There was more alcohol in the room and we were encouraged to drink some more as they offered the bottles to us and insisted on drinking games, and already drunk, I obviously complied.
In reality, it was mutually talked about and everyone was just having fun.
As for why he showed the Instagram DMs, he says it was to communicate they were friendly for months after the fact, and it was never communicated to him that he had caused any problem for her. He also touches on the elevator story.
The next thing she talks about is the elevator. She said that we left at the same time and that her hotel room was on the other side of the hotel. So there was like kind of 2 corridors connected by an elevator room in the middle. So she's saying that she was just going past the elevator to get to her room. And again, this is totally reasonable. I brought this up because from her stream, the way that it was told kind of implied that I followed her out and then that she waited to take the next elevator instead of getting in with me while I tried to convince her to get in. I'll just play the clip of her saying this, so I'm not speaking for her.
I went to leave and the older guy decided to leave with me. We walked to the elevators where I didn't get on. He then pretended that the elevator was broken and that he couldn't leave, telling me to get in the elevator to prove it was broken.
In my original video, I just wanted to clarify this, that we left together because the night was over and that she was on the same floor, so she didn't actually have to take the elevator. And it seems like she agrees with this now.
Now, he confronts the text message from his friend who was there, who had expressed concern about what happened that night. But as it turns out, this message was not even from that person, it was some random, unrelated message from someone.
She said she didn't mention him though because he left early and she didn't even know his name. And she shows a text message that she says is from him from the night where this happened, where he says this. Obviously, this is implying that he was kind of uncomfortable with what was happening, and also that he knew her age, despite just meeting her. And when I first saw this actually majorly changed my perspective on the night, because that would mean that my friend was also uncomfortable and somehow knew her age when I didn't. And even though she said that he left early, my memory of it was actually that he was the last to leave, just before me and Katie left. Dream also came to me and mentioned that this changed his perspective of the night as well, because that would mean that he was essentially the only person that wasn't uncomfortable, and that therefore he should have known. This really concerned me. I kind of was just sitting there like really thinking, how could this have happened? So I reached out to my friend to talk to him about it. And it turns out that he actually didn't send this message. I'm gonna play a phone call that I had with him after I found this out, just because I think it gives more context.
What's up?
So there is a text that is claimed to be from you.
Yeah, I didn't send that text. I found out about it when you sent it to me. But yeah, no, that wasn't me. I don't know where they got that from. I didn't ask them for any of their phone numbers or anything like that.
For some reason, Katie had used this message to prop up her side of the story, when in reality it wasn't even from that guy. You could argue she was confused about who it was from, maybe she was misinformed by someone else, but whatever charitable view you want to give this, it's still a major flaw from her story and basically knocks down her strongest new screenshot. While this is totally anecdotal, this guy also says that Katie's recount of how this all went down is insane.
I couldn't really believe it, like half the shit I was saying. Like, as someone that was there, like other ways that I've heard it being like described, like from what I was like reading and watching online, is actually kind of insane.
Katie claimed a lot of the touch was initiated by George and that she was uncomfortable with it. Once again, keep in mind she left the fact they were cuddling out of her initial allegation entirely.
A lot of the cuddling he may have felt was personal, but it was just me being drunk. I do think a lot of the cuddling was initiated by me, but some of it wasn't. I was also drunk, but my impression at the time was that it was very mutual. She also says that, quote, I didn't know cuddling was an invitation. I don't think just cuddling is an invitation for anything. I only brought the cuddling up because it's something that she didn't mention at all in her original stream.
We sat on the couch and the older guy sat right next to me while playing. It was a little after that when I resorted to playing games on my phone when it happened.
And again, it's something that I think people need to know about to understand my perspective fully.
George then addresses the situation with Average Harry. He reiterates a lot of what Dream said and expressed confusion at the fact everyone involved communicated to Dream that nothing bad had happened that night months before Katie went public.
Dream actually had a conversation about this with almost everyone that was in that room a few months later. One of their friends had actually tweeted about Dream, saying that he was inviting an 18-year-old girl back to his hotel to drink at VidCon, and was implying very negative things about Dream being a predator. So Dream realized this could have only been about Katie because it was a pretty specific call out, but thought that it was just being purposefully misleading from someone that hated him. Dream actually had no idea as well that anyone was uncomfortable and assumed that this tweet was implying Katie was uncomfortable with Dream. He reached out to Ghosty about it, asking what this was even about, and did the same to others, including Katie. Now, I'm not going to be showing Katie's text with Dream because at the time Dream had told her that her messages and conversation would not leave their texts. However, here is Dream and Ghosty's conversation about it. I was never brought up or mentioned at all. And also, when Dream makes fun of Harry for being ridiculous and making stuff up because nothing happened and we were all still friends, she said, exactly. She actually spoke about this on her stream very recently, and I don't want to speak for her, so I'm going to play the clip where she clarifies these messages.
The only time that we had a conversation about anything that had to do with that night was obviously when the stuff with Harry happened, and he texted me asking if it seemed like anything had happened. And I, at the time, said no, because the conversation was not about George. The conversation was about him, and it was about the underage drinking, and it wasn't ever about whether or not Katie, you know, it was always just about him and not George, which is why I said, dude, no, nothing seemed wrong, because he wasn't doing anything wrong, and I can stand by that. I will stand by that comment, and I said that in one of my posts that, you know, it wasn't him. That was our conversation. It was never about George. It was about him and the Harry situation. And it was about me. It at the time had seemed that Dream was one who had taken advantage of Katie, and I said he didn't, and I didn't lie.
And Ghosty, I'm really not trying to use your words against Katie or you. I'm just trying to paint an accurate picture of our perspective of the night, and to do that, I kind of have to talk about everything that we knew. I don't think your words negate at all how Katie felt, of course, but they did affect how I perceived the situation afterwards.
If Dream is being accused of bringing an 18-year-old to his room to get them drunk, and he messages someone asking what it's about, wouldn't that be the time to mention, oh, well, Dream didn't do anything bad, but this happened with George? It's a reasonable assumption that this would come up, and it would dispel any confusion around Dream doing something bad as well. Ghosty is covering for her friend, which you can respect to an extent, but when people's careers are on the line, you have to do the right thing. George also claims that many of the people involved in this situation continued to be cool with him after the fact, despite supposedly knowing and believing this story from Katie.
I just assumed it was because of Dream. Dream had false grooming allegations against him, and I assumed that because of this and my association with Dream, people didn't like me. After Dream posted his video disproving these allegations, I honestly thought pretty poorly of creators that were still negative to me, as now I thought there was literally no reason for it. And now, after seeing Katie's follow-up, I realized that probably everyone knew about this behind the scenes, and I think that is insane. I was walking around with these people at other events or interacted with them in any way, and all the time they were just thinking terribly about me, and I didn't even know, and neither did any of my friends. If I'd seen Katie in person, I would have gone up to her normally. I would have assumed we were still friends. I think this is a massive injustice to Katie. It actually kind of makes me rethink a lot of my experiences with other creators, just looking back on it with this new information. And I don't even know who these people are. And even right now, after all of this information is public and out there, I still haven't had a single private conversation with anyone who knew about it prior to Katie's stream. This is all just to say that I didn't have any idea that there was a problem, and I wish that I had, and I should have.
He then claims that the reason he never saw her age in her bio is because Katie had a professional business account on Instagram, which does not show any special characters in a username, including her age. This entire response put the ball firmly in Katie's court. She was being criticized on Twitter, even by Dream stan accounts that had initially supported her. Too many holes had been poked in her story for even them to ignore. Over on YouTube, commentary channels were going guerrilla mode.
She is completely and utterly disregarding this cuddling. That is completely and utterly out of the window now.
It was an accident, chat. It was an accident. She had a little oopsies, chat. She had a little oopsies, included the wrong screenshot. Tee wall. I listed all of the accidents that Katie's had so far. Here we go. I'm freshly 18. Okay, so VidCon is June, sweetheart, and your birthday's in January. You were 18 for 6 months. That's not freshly. It was my first convention. Okay, so you went to TwitchCon prior to this. It was actually not your first convention. We showed up drunk. Now, I don't know who to believe here, but your friend went on live stream and said, oh, Katie must have been mistaken. We didn't drink before that. Oh, okay. And then she misspoke, was claimed by her friend and others about her. Yeah, Katie was reading from her notes and had time to issue a pre-prepared statement. There's no such thing as misspeaking. She had plenty of time to issue both of these. In fact, she sat on these for a fucking year.
Part of it that's been brought up is the fact that she said she talked to some of her friends and stuff. There seems to be some kind of friend group behind this. A lot of people speculate it's this girl named Amesy. I don't know if that's true at all. But whoever her friends were that, you know, played into this delusion that she had and you know, the power of suggestion can be very powerful. It can make you misremember things even and take events very differently. It's very possible that there were some people behind the scenes that were making her think that it was worse than it really was.
And this brings us to Katie's final response, the allegation to end all allegations. On Sunday, March 24th, Katie fired up another Twitch stream to respond to George's response.
The tone of this new stream is very different. While before she was crying, she's now filled with rage. The biggest development here is that Katie changes her story, or updates it if you want to believe that. Previously, she said that George stuck his hand under her shirt. She never went into detail about what that meant, so everyone assumed this meant tickling her or touching her stomach. She now claims that George did something else.
The one biggest thing that I want to clear up, it is fucking sexual assault, okay? I'm not gonna apologize, say that it isn't sexual assault, that I'm not a sexual assault victim. The touching that he has admitted to many times is touching. That he admitted to not asking or getting my consent before he did. He felt up my tits on a couch with other people there.
She is enraged that people don't believe her story and insists that she told the truth.
It's not fake allegations. I'm not a liar. Quite literally, the thing that I was talking about is my sexual assault. And that's the one thing he confirmed. He can sit there and confirm that he did it. And I'm still sat here getting called a liar, getting called a fake victim, getting called, what was it? And a prude at the same time. And quite frankly, it's fucking ridiculous.
Her constantly repeating that George admitted to assaulting her when he denied it multiple times is pretty infuriating. She's spinning her wheels, clinging to some alternate reality where he admitted guilt. She's upset that people question her story and also expresses that she hopes journalists who reached out to her for a response should die.
The fact of fucking reporters messaging me asking for my fucking take on it all, or my comment on it, actually fucking choke. Are you joking?
As for the claim she was freshly 18, she responded by saying she meant to say she was freshly out of high school.
What I meant to say in that original stream where I said I was freshly 18, I said I was freshly 18 and just out of high school. What I meant to say was I was 18 and freshly out of high school.
And when asked why she didn't go to the police, she states she thought they just wouldn't do anything.
For people saying take legal action, do you know the odds of winning an assault case? Like, there's a reason. There's 1 out of 3 girls are assaulted in their lives, okay? There's a reason so many of them don't come out about this. The system, you would like to believe that it's always for you. The amount of fucking injustice that happens with our system is insane.
To be clear, if you are assaulted, it is always worth going to the police. Something may come of it, something may not, but at the very least, it's absolutely worth trying. This is a horrible message to give to an audience, especially one that could have actual victims in it. If you are a victim, please go to the cops. There's not much substance in the rest of her response, and there's not a screenshot for a single claim she makes. The only other important comments about this would come from Shelby Shubble herself. Much like in her initial allegation against Wilbur, Shubble refused to name people involved, but she did say that being attracted to an 18-year-old is creepy, and alluded to the fact she believed the allegations against George were true.
And I think that if you think it's acceptable as soon as someone turns 18, suddenly it's okay to make all types of sexual jokes and to be physically violent with them, or to, I just think it's despicable. Don't mess with teenagers. What are you doing?
I really don't like the implication that George is a predator, which is basically a claim Shubble gets to make here while also absolving herself of responsibility because she didn't name him. It's pretty shitty. Her allegations against Wilbur may be true. Time will tell if he has any real rebuttal, but for now, it looks bad for him, I'll say that. But to then make claims like this really hurts her credibility. Shockingly, since all of this went down, Katie privated her Twitter account and deleted her Twitch VODs talking about this. The most shameful part about it all is the disservice this does to real victims. When they come out, their story is less likely to be believed because of the abundance of false allegations from people like Katie Bugs. Anyway, I've been Turkey Tom, thanks for watching, and until next time.
Take a card, you can leave. I like the vibe.